Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is ghostmutgaming with me, Christopher, and this is a video about Elden Ring. Sort of a essay video, let's call it. I did a similar thing on Cyberpunk 2077 some time ago, and I thought that, you know what, Elden Ring probably deserves similar attention, because after all, it's been on the top of many people's Game of the Year lists, and I want to sort of go over why that isn't the case for me. And I said at the end of the series that I maybe didn't really want to talk then about my thoughts. I just sort of did a very quick recap of how I began the series. And yeah, indeed, we're gonna do this. Now, I do realize that the title of this video might be a little bit grabby. That's 100% intentional, of course. I do want to point out that I actually do still think that the game is very, very good. In fact, it probably is a great game. However, the video is called Elden Ring is not as great as you think it is. And I'm going to try to go over why that is the case. Now, this is all obviously very, very subjective. These are my personal views of the game. You should not take them 100% serious if they don't apply to you, etc, etc. And I also want to sort of preface this by saying that some of the critiques that I might have of the game, some of you might say that, well, the game isn't really about that, and that usually goes back to the previous games, that is to say Dark Souls 1, 2 and 3, Bloodborne, Sekiro, etc, etc. And to that I say phooey, because I think that the game could have been more, and actually that is sort of the summary that we're gonna vaguely get to in the end. Elden Ring is a great game, however it could have been so much more had they done some things a little bit different. So that is the very short of this video, and I have basically sort of 5 talking points that I want to go over. It's I mean, I might get to some other things, but it's 5 main things. And I'm gonna sort of, I think I'm gonna go from the things that work the best to the things that works the worst, so to speak. And yeah, I think that that's enough talking about what this is gonna be like. Let's talk about the actual video, rather the actual game in truth. Elden Ring. It's the game that we're talking about, yes. So we're gonna go over the first thing, which is the obvious one, the big kahuna, the thing that everyone talks about, the thing that is basically the foundation for everyone's reason to place it at the top of their Game of the Year list, and that is the world. Because yes, and this is obviously something that I'm gonna agree with, the world that From Software built in Elden Ring is, well, it is basically flawless, isn't it? Well, okay, it isn't flawless, but it's pretty damn good. It's amazing, it's gigantic, it's just beautiful to look at, it's wonderful to explore in, and it's just a feat of world design and level design as well, if we think about like smaller areas, so to speak. And yeah, it is open world, or rather fantasy open world, maybe I should say, that is the best one that's ever been made to this point, and it's probably gonna be the best one ever made for quite some time, maybe all through this decade, and it's only 2022 when this game was released. So yeah, it is a good one. It is remarkable, and in some cases I have said that it is a bit ridiculous, actually, how good it is. It is, wow. Wow is a very good summarization of this world. And it is both, you know, as I said, exploration. I mean, this game, the world, I think it's not the largest world we've ever seen. I don't know exactly how it compares to, let's say, Skyrim. I think it's not that much bigger, if it even is bigger. But the fact is that it's filled to the brim with things that you can explore. And not only that, but there's, you know, a below ground as well. Not just the actual below ground maps, but all the catacombs, all the buildings, etc, etc. There's just so much that you can do in this game. And I think that one way to look at it is that I played the series for 57, I think, episodes, all of which were roughly 1 hour. So about, let's just say 57 hours it took me to show you my playthrough of Elden Ring. the character that I played for over 120 hours, so, you know, more than twice that. And all of that, all of the things that you did not see were basically just exploration. Nothing but exploration. I didn't do, except for what was it? Was it 2 bosses, I think, that I accidentally did, so to speak. Well, one I sort of wanted to do because I was in a place where I really didn't want to go again, and another one was actually part of a failed recording, basically. But other than that, every boss that I killed was recorded and was in the videos. Everything else, just exploration. That's insane. 120 hours just to explore the map, and let me tell you, I did not even explore everything. I did not even explore close to everything. Boy, did I miss out on a lot. I mean, specifically, if we take the very end of the game, when we get back to the capital and it's a bit of a wasteland, there's I assume it's an Everjowl that you can go down to, possibly related to the guy in Roundtable Hold. I just skipped that because I felt that, you know what, we've been doing this for far too long already. So yeah, it is a remarkable thing that they built. However, there is something that I don't like about this world, and the way that I've sort of tried to explain it to myself, at least, is to do an analogy, which is that imagine the world of Elden Ring as a building, a house, let's just say, and imagine it is the most beautiful, perfectly constructed house you've ever seen. I mean, anywhere you look, anywhere you poke, is just marvelous. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it. It is fantastic. It doesn't matter what style it is, because it would be the one that you think is the best. Now, open the doors and go inside, and what you'll find is that it is completely empty. There's absolutely nothing. White walls, nothing on them, no furniture, no paintings, no nothing. It is hollow. That is how I view the world of Elden Ring, and let me explain why. Because I can just obviously put a disclaimer out and say that yes, there are people you have to talk to, there are people that give you a little bit of meat to the game, but in regular exploration, there's basically nothing. I mean, the game and the world gives you all of these situations, let's just call them situations, and I've called them scenes, for example, and you basically never get explanations for any of them. And I can pick up a few examples. One of them, something that you find very early on in the game, is that you will come across corpses in chairs. They are in a lot of places, and in some cases in fairly remote locations. So the question is, why? Why have apparently some characters taken a sometimes fairly hefty chair? We're not talking a stool here. We're talking not a throne either, but, you know, a pretty hefty bit of wood here. Dragged it to a fairly remote location, sat down at it, and died. Why? We don't know, because the game never tells you. The game never has any explanations for these little things. And in one particular one, related to corpses in chairs, on the beach, which is sort of just northeast, I believe, of Castle Morn, there is 3 of the corpses. I think 1 or 2 are still in the chair, one is lying in the water, because this is just off the beach in the water. And those 3 corpses, which you can loot for some, you know, low-level loot, are surrounded by hostile jellyfish. Now, normally, jellyfish are not hostile. They are blue-white-ish. If you go close, I think, or if you just attack them, they turn red, and they go hostile. These jellyfish are already hostile when you see them for the first time. They don't aggro you until you sort of get close to them. So again, the question is, why are there like 4 or 5, I think, angry jellyfish hovering over these 3 corpses with chairs? No idea, because the game doesn't tell you. There's absolutely nothing. Another example is that in the Altus Plateau, we have the Mirage Tower. Now, there are a bunch of towers in this game that you can find, and many of them contain some sort of loot. So is the case with the Mirage Tower. However, the Mirage Tower doesn't actually appear immediately. And in front of it, or where it actually would be, is one of those imp statues. So when you interact with the imp statue, you get a map. And the map sort of vaguely describes that, yeah, you have to go to certain places to sort of open up the tower. And the two places that you need to go to contain sort of a magical seal thing, and you need to interact with that one. So do those two, get back to the tower, and now it's visible again. Why? Who came up with that idea? Who was the person or persons that decided that this is how we're going to do this particular tower? Because there, as far as I can remember, there isn't anything in it that's particularly interesting as such. I mean, there's obviously some cool loot. I don't actually remember what it is. But why cover the tower up? Why? There's nothing. Absolutely nothing. And as a final example, also in the Altus Plateau, we have the Windmill Village. And the Windmill Village has a bunch of ladies dancing and gaggling and just having a grand old time. There's also a boss at the very top of the village. Absolutely no explanation for what's going on in that place. Nada, zero, zilch. There's no explanation for why these women are dancing around gaggling or cackling or whatever you want to call it. Nothing at all. And I don't understand this, because they built this amazing world with so much stuff going on, so many, as I call them, scenes, things that just happen, things that you can have an explanation for. You can make up your own explanation, I suppose, but why wouldn't the game tell you this? Now, I know that there are certain things that might get explained if you look at like items, like weapons. If you look at a specific weapon of a specific boss, I think some of them have like a bit of information about, for example, that character, etc. But that's not a good way to, you know, present your world. If you look at, like, let's say Skyrim or Fallout, for example, what you would find are little notes. It could be a note with like one line of text, that's it. Or it can be in Fallout, you can have an entire terminal with multiple entries. You can have a diary that someone has written down the things in. It's so easy to do, and in Elden Ring it just doesn't exist. It's completely void of any filling, and I don't understand that. It feels like the world is a 10 out of 10. It's basically a 12 out of 10, but it gets lowered because it actually doesn't contain any meat, anything that compels me to visit it again. I mean, it's just loot, basically. You find these corpses and it's just loot, and very often, specifically on these corpses, it's just basic loot even. It's not even fun loot. It's just a mushroom here, or a flower here, or a smithing stone here. It's like these characters brought a smithing stone to this remote locations with a chair and then died in it, and we don't know why. I don't understand that. One final thing that we can say about the world as well, this is more of a side note. I don't see this as, I see it as a bit of a critique, but it's not like the biggest critique, which is that one of the reasons why they've been able to do the world so interesting as they have is because it's not very realistic, let's just say. Again, compared to the world of Skyrim, for example, the world of Skyrim is, even though the scales are a little bit wrong, let's say with regards of size of cities and the distance between cities, but the stuff in between, very, very realistic. You have your fields, you have your little logging camps, etc, etc. The lands between in Elden Ring doesn't contain any of that. I complained fairly early on that there is a question about where food comes from in this world. Like, what do people eat here? Because, okay, fine, they're demi-humans, they're not entirely humans, but surely they eat something, right? Is it just berries and mushrooms, or what? And then I came to the Windmill Village that I talked about before, and all right, we have windmills. Windmills are used to produce flour. You can make bread with flour. I mean, that's cool. But there aren't any fields with wheat or grains or oats or anything like that to make into flour. So what are the windmills doing there? They're not functional. There's nothing to put in them. You could possibly argue that yes, the world was indeed fractured as part of the war. Sure. But again, you created the world. You could have included those bits easily and have it not be fairly unrealistic. Now, it is a fantasy world, and realism is, I mean, it's a thing that you can talk about in a fantasy setting, but some things are just a little bit too fantastical. We can also talk about, let's say, the bridge that leads out from Stormvale. Who would build that in the real world? You have your castle and you want to build a tower out in the water, and you build this bridge that's like, I don't know, 30-40 meters high up in the air. Like, why would you do that? That's the stupidest thing that you could do. And I also mentioned one time in the Halleck tree, when we were making our way down, one of the last descents was a really long ladder. And again, you have to wonder, who designed this? If we talk about like in the game world, let's just say, not the actual designer. Like, was this the best way that we could get up to that level that we were on before? This really long ladder? That's also insane. Yeah, there are some things about the world that doesn't really make sense, but basically, this is sort of the summarization for the entire almost video, that the world that they created is one of the best, if not the best. Well, actually, it is the best open world fantasy or fantasy open world. There we go. That we've ever seen, and it will be for quite some time. But they failed in actually filling it with anything interesting. That is a big damn shame. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about is another thing that works really well, and it is. I could say obvious that it is one of the things that works really well, and that is, of course, the bosses. Because what is a From Software Souls-like without the bosses? And boy, do we get a lot of bosses in Elden Ring. Holy crap, do we get a lot of bosses. Some could argue that it's slightly too many bosses, and in fact, that is my biggest critique, but we'll get to that. Let's talk about the actual bosses. I haven't played, as I mentioned before, the previous games, that is to say Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, and Bloodborne, and Sekiro, or Demon Souls for that matter, but I have seen people play them. And in some cases, I've seen them play them in, well, I say their entirety. Of course, there could be things that they haven't done, the people that play them. But gauging what I've seen and comparing it to Elden Ring just knocks it out of the park. Holy crap, are the bosses good. Like, they are interesting, they are unique, they have cool mechanics, they are visually pleasing. I mentioned this very early when I was doing Margit. That was a really visually pleasing boss when he uses his big hammer in the sort of second phase. The way he moves, the way he looks, it's just really well made. But not only that, but the bosses are always doable, if you know what I mean. And we can talk about me, for example. I struggled on Malenia. I took about, I think, 6 or 7 hours to defeat her, which I, you know, lowered to one hour episode. But yeah, it took a long while. But the beauty of it was that during my many attempts, I always picked up something. Almost every single attempt, something I just realized, alright, she does that, now she does this, I have to move like this, I have to move like that, timings on attacks, when do I dodge roll, etc, etc. You always pick up something, and when you put all of it together, in the end you do defeat the bosses, and this has been true for me for almost every single boss that I had some issues with. So Malenia, for example, we can talk about Godfrey and Godfrey / Horalu, the beast clergyman / Maliketh, right? The final bosses, the fire giant. I had issues with some bosses, Renala, obviously, one of the first ones, but in the end I always managed to beat them. I always managed to get them down because, you know, they are not impossible. Even me playing, I don't want to say, I mean, I played as a sorcerer, and I've sort of vaguely understood that it's a little bit easier. Being ranged is a good thing for quite a lot of bosses, but it doesn't make them walkovers or pushovers. Some of them do, yes, but the bigger ones, not whatsoever. And even so, in the end, I managed to beat them, and I did some of the bosses like hardcore mode, I want to say, but which is that I rarely did any, you know, consistently buffing or anything like that. I had my regular stuff like my talismans and stuff like that, but consumables, I very rarely used consumables. And in fact, when I finished the last boss, I didn't even use rune arcs, which I did on a couple of attempts. So yeah, it was just, the bosses are just very, very well made, both technically and visually, and I have been really, really having fun with them in the end. However, as I said, one of my biggest critiques, and in fact probably my only critique, is that there are too many of them. Now, don't get me wrong, with regards to, like, let's just call them central bosses, not just the bosses that gets a cutscene, not just them, but bosses that are in fairly strategical places, bosses that you, for example, cannot avoid, for example, they're fine. I mean, I think that they are in an okay amount, let's just say. However, there are a certain number of bosses that you gotta wonder why we had to have so many of them. Let's just take the prime example, the Erdtree avatars. How many Erdtree avatars are there in this game that are boss level Erdtree avatars? I think it's like 5 or 6 or something. They work exactly the same. I think they even have the exact same amount of health. Possibly there are a bit of scaling there, but for the most part, yeah, they work exactly the same. Did we really need that? Why couldn't you just made one Erdtree avatar of a boss level that was, you know, a significant boss? And then the rest of them at every single Erdtree could have just been regular enemies, because we do get the Erdtree avatar, as far as I know, at least 3 places where it isn't a boss level enemy. You have it in the capital on the sort of promenade, in Elfell at the door leading down, as well as in the deep roots, I believe. Yeah, the deep roots is what it's called, yes. So you have them in the game, not as bosses, but we have them many times as bosses as well. And I just think it's just a bit too much, because one of the things that I definitely felt in my series, and this is actually the reason why I didn't actually finish all the optional bosses that I had found, is that in the end I just got bored of it. And that's not a good that's not a good grade for bosses, that you don't want to do bosses because you're just bored of doing them. No. Bosses should be interesting. Bosses should be compelling. You want to kill the bosses. So when you get to bosses where you just feel like, I don't want to do this again, then you've made a mistake, I think. And yeah, that's basically what I think about bosses. And as a summary there, yes, the bosses are really, really good, but some of the optional bosses could have been either removed completely or made regular enemies. Now, the next topic that I want to talk about is actually something that I, from the beginning, said to myself, that yes, this actually does work rather well, but then, of course, I have a bit of a twist on it. But no, I have since then rejected that thought, and it is something that isn't working. Okay, it does work well in some cases, but it doesn't work well in other cases, and that is regular combat. Now, this is a tried and true formula, really. It's basically the same as Demon Souls. You run forward, you run backwards, you dodge roll to the left, you dodge roll to the right, you have your regular attack, you have your heavy attack, etc, etc. It's very, very similar to all the previous games. Very little has been either changed, improved, or, well, made worse, I suppose. The addition of the Ashes of War is, however, a really, really nice touch, because it allows the player to make their own choices of how they want to play the character. You have a weapon, it has the Ash of War, you can change it to something else if you want to do something else. And I think that is a good way of doing it. Now, one thing that doesn't work well at all when it comes to combat is, well, sorceries. And I suppose incantations too, but I'm going to be speaking from the experience of playing as a sorcerer, which is that, yeah, it just doesn't work. It is very, very, very apparent that they really didn't change anything with regards to sorceries, despite making sorceries really, really interesting. So if you look back at the previous games, again, I don't know exactly how it worked, but I'm pretty sure that in Elden Ring we have a lot more options, like many, many options. I don't know exactly how many spells I had in the end, but it was was probably up in the 2030s or something like that, and of some of those were probably interesting to use as well, but I ended up using 3 of them, and I didn't even use one of them because, well, I didn't really need to. I had my comet, and that was it. And the reason why that is because I had, in the end, 6 memory slots. I don't know if you can get more, but I had 6 memory slots. There is no way that I would have been able to effectively, let's talk bosses now, effectively used said 6 slots, because if I have the comet as my main damage dealing spell, and then I want to change to something else to do like a buff or something like that, or just a different kind of damage, I have to scroll through the spells or sorceries. And if I have 6 of them, chances are when I try to scroll back to the comet, well, I'm gonna scroll past it. I'm gonna have to scroll over again. Yeah, it's really, really bad. It's really bad. This game is not made for people who want to do nothing but sorceries. I mean, we have 4 shoulder buttons on a regular controller, right? You have the 2 buttons, you have the 2 triggers. Why can't I connect 4 spells to either one of those? That would have been a really good way of doing it. And yeah, I mean, if I play as a sorcerer and I have my staff out, I'm not going to be doing melee damage with my staff, am I? Not that much at least. So, and I'm not going to use an Ash of War from my staff either. I mean, the staff that I got, which was the one from Renala, had the spinning weapon Ash of War. Okay, cool. I'm never going to use it, but cool that it's there. Why couldn't they have given me the opportunity to have 4 spells simultaneously active, and I just pressed the correct button to use them? That would have made it all very, very, very interesting and much more fun, and just more dynamic to be playing as a sorcerer. And I think the same kind of goes for incantations, although incantations might be a little bit more about buffing yourself, possibly. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. So combat, sure, for melee characters, absolutely, nothing to it. It's the same as it always has been. It's not worse, it's arguably a little bit better with regards to the Ashes of War, but for anyone who doesn't want to use melee weapons, yeah, the game is still not that good. And now we're getting to things that maybe aren't as great as they could be in this game. And we're gonna start with the story, or stories, maybe I should say, because, well, we have the main story, and we also have some smaller stories that take part in this world. Or should I say lack of story, because the main story of this game is one of the weaker stories that we've ever seen. As far as I've understood, the story is we had a Elden Lord, Godfrey. He had an Elden Ring, which was, I guess, his signature, that he was indeed the Elden Lord. There was a war, that ring got broken. Some people took part of that ring. I don't know if it's, by the way, is an actual ring, like a physical ring, because I think it's basically just a magical ring seal or something. But a few people took their own shards, and our job, apparently, is to gather those shards, put them together again, and become the Elden Lord. That's it. That's the whole story of this game. And the fact of the matter is it really though? Because our character, the main character of this game, the one that we are playing, the protagonist of this world, has absolutely no agency in it. At basically 0 point in the entire playthrough does the main character question what they're doing. No. The only thing that matters is that we are tarnished and we can see the guidance of grace. Therefore, says everyone, we should become the Elden Lord. The main character goes, well, alright then, guess I have to start killing things. And I mean, that's the weakest story I've ever seen, and the weakest main character I've ever seen. Now, I do realize that, yes, some might say that that's not really what these games are about. These games are not about a deep story as such. And in fact, I'm going to argue that on many occasions the stories are vaguely similar. Something has happened. A few select characters have something that you need to kill them to get it, and there we go. But it comes with so many questions in Elden Ring, I think, especially with regards to how they've done it. And one of the things that I'm gonna bring up is Renala. Because Renala is a character that we step into her chambers, and basically she attacks us outright. There's no room here for diplomacy or anything. And I mean, fine, fair enough. It's Elden Ring. It's a about killing bosses, yes. But we have a first phase where we kill her, we empty her entire health bar. Then she sort of gets back up on her feet and we are teleported into an alternate dimension or something. We fight her again, we empty her health bar the second time, and after that she's just alive. And now apparently fairly, you know, friendly to us. And actually wants to help us with if we want to reroll our character. So why did we fight her? Why did she want to fight us? There's absolutely no explanation for this in the game at all. It is just assumed that that is what we're doing, and once we've beaten her, it's fine, she's cool, we're all friends again, la-di-da-di-da. I don't like that. It's just not well made. And the entire thing about this is the weirdest thing, because George R.R. Martin, the author of A Song of Fire and Ice, or Game of Thrones, is in on this, has helped out with creating this world, and I gotta wonder, I haven't read his books, by the way, so I don't know exactly how he writes as an author, but if he has done any writing in this game, holy hell is he bad at writing, because the writing in this game is really, really bad. It's borderline atrocious, really. And connected to that, and I've said this many, many times in the series that I did, the voice acting is remarkably bad. And I say that not, rather, what I'm saying isn't that the voice actors are bad. I'm saying that the voice acting is bad, most likely because of how they have been directed. That is to say, the way they talk, and this is not exactly every single character, it's the majority, but not all of them. How they speak is so unnatural, so unrealistic, that you have gotta wonder, why did they get directed to do that? Because it's just weird. It's just weird, it's boring, it's... I really can't get any good good words here out for it, but it's really, really, really bad. One thing, and now I'm gonna connect back to the world building of this game, and this is regarding the stories that we have in the game. And this is probably gonna tie into my final point as well, which is that you meet a bunch of characters in this game, and they tell you things, right? They tell you things, they sometimes have missions for you, you sometimes need to deliver things, you sometimes need to go to clear out a castle, or something like that. And that's all cool and well. But I am so much lacking a quest log. Now, I want to be very clear here. I'm not saying a quest log that gives you like quest markers. No. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking more along the lines of, let's say, Baldur's Gate, where you have a journal. You have a journal, and when you talk to someone, that journal gets filled in. It doesn't get filled in with, here's the next step of the mission or quest. No. It would only say, I talked to this character said this. That's it. That's the only thing that I'm looking for. But we don't have that. We don't have anything. Apparently our character is not interested in actually making a journal of the people that they have talked to. And that creates problems, because you actually definitely can forget what you have been doing. And yes, of course, you could go back and talk to the character again, but then you would be in the final stages of their conversation and you wouldn't be able to get all the information that you need. It would have been a super simple thing to add a new page, so to speak, in the UI for a journal. Let's just say that you met someone. You met one character that I actually missed completely in my playthrough, Kenneth Height. I don't know. Very early on you find him in Limgrave, and he has a mission for you. He wants your help to clear out his little garrison, I want to call it. It's not much of a castle, it's basically a fort. So cool, we have that mission. He says it's to the south of the Mistwoods. Cool. Just jot that down in a journal so we know that. It doesn't have to give me the quest marker for said castle or fort. It doesn't have to do that. It doesn't even have to give me, you know, again, a quest marker or an arrow or anything like that. The information that we got from talking to the character is enough, but write it down so we actually have it for later. So that is one of the things that this game really would have needed, because you do talk to a fair number of characters, and remembering what exactly every one of them said, it's not that easy. And that does tie into my final bit. This is going to be a very short one. It's also not the biggest issue that I have with the game. I've already gone over them. But the UI. The UI is... I mean... We had this UI in the 1990s. We don't need this UI anymore. And I'm not so much talking about the UI in the general, that is to say when you're out exploring, etc. Although that's... I mean, I talked a little bit about that with regards to, let's say, combat and the sorceries. I mean, the fact of the matter is that they haven't changed the UI or how it works, and that's one of the reasons why sorceries were working the way they were. So, had they been able to actually change the UI, make it a little bit better, let's just say a action wheel could have been good in this game, but no, they really didn't care enough to do that. I'm mainly talking about the inventory UI as well as an addition here. Item management we're going to talk a bit about too, but the UI, we're over having icons as large as basically a quarter of the inventory for items. We're over that, we're past that, we don't do that anymore. We have lists, we have the name and the important information about said item, and then you can highlight it and you can get extra information together with an image, for example. But we have gone past this this whole thing about really large icons to depict what we have in our inventory, and this is actually quite important for Elden Ring specifically, because one of my critiques as well about this game is that there are too many items. I'm not talking so much about like weapons and armor, because many of the weapons and armors that you pick up are unique ones, and that's fine. I mean, that's just cool to have. Some games actually lack a lot of unique weapons and armor, so I'm not talking about that. I'm talking more about the other items. So, for example, consumable items, for example, crafting items. Holy hell, are there a lot of crafting items. And when you have an inventory that basically shows you, I don't know, is it 24 items on one page? It's bloody difficult to understand exactly what it is that you have in your inventory. We can also talk about other items, and I mentioned this sometime during the series, the ashes, for example, the ones that you can summon. There are a lot of them, and basically 9 out of 10 of those are going to be completely uninteresting to you. So why are there so many of them? They are not unique, they are not, you know, good for certain situations, etc. No, some of them are just not interesting whatsoever, but you still pick them up because they exist in the world. It's just, no, it's really not that good. And so, yeah, there's just a bunch of items that could have been omitted very easily from the game, and I think that they should have done that. And the final thing about the item managing thing, which is something that I've also mentioned in my series, is that you have a lot of items that gives you benefits, but you never know how much, because the game doesn't tell you. For example, I was running around for a very long time, I think into the end of the game, with a talisman that boosted sorceries. What does that mean? In what way? How does it boost sorceries? And which value has been affected, and by how much? No idea whatsoever. I don't know if it's if the point is that we're supposed to test everything to find out what is good or not, but that's just such bad game design. You just have the numerical value of what we're given. It's really freaking easy, and you should have done that. It's a horrible system that they've done. And we can also talk about the fact that, for example, if you are at a shop and you want to have a bit of a look at what they're selling in terms of weapons and armor, you can't compare it to what you currently have equipped. How is this a thing? We've been doing this for 20-odd, 30-odd years. How could they have missed that? Why is that a thing? Again, are we supposed to just buy everything and then look whether or not it's good or not? Again, it's just such a bad system, and I don't understand why they've done that. And in the end, I still think this is a great game. Yes, because while I do have my critiques of this game, I mean, it is still an amazing game, and I've had fun playing it. But as I said in the end of my series, I don't really want to play more of this, I think. But I say that I have created a new character. I've done sort of the beginning phases of the game, but we'll see how long I can manage to play that. What I do know is that I will not play any more of Elden Ring. If they have a DLC, I will not be playing it. If they release, and that is to say from software, a new game that is sort of similar to Elden Ring, I assume that they are going to do that in like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years or so. I will not be playing it. I had fun, absolutely, but I require more story. I require a main character that actually has an agency in the game. I want a reason for playing the game. As it is right now, I don't have a reason for playing the game, or rather my character doesn't have a reason for anything that they do. I need interactions with the world. I need information about the world. I want to feel that I am playing in a world that makes sense, in a world that has content, really. Not just content in terms of loot and fun places and secrets, but content content in terms of story, in terms of explanations, of deep dives into various areas, etc. Why are things, not just are they, but why are they? If they make a change to that in their next game, well, okay, fine, I will have a bit of a look at it. As it is right now, Elden Ring is just too barren for me, and I think that is a big shame, because as I said, it is a great game, it is an amazing game, but it could have been so much better, and that is basically why it is not at the top of my Game of the Year list. For now though, this has been ghostmutgaming with me, Christopher. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.